Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Future Doctor podcast series by Gyanberry. My name is Tejas. I'm the CEO of Gyanberry. In this amazing podcast, we are going to interview international students from top medical universities. We will understand how the life of a medical student is, what are the challenges they face, and most importantly, how did they apply to a medical school, what it takes to get into a top medical school, and so many other things. So if you are a high school student or a parent of a child who is thinking to apply to a medical school, this is the podcast you should not definitely miss out on. So in today's episode, I'm going to interview Ankita Sunil, who is a final year student at the Tbilisi State Medical University in Georgia. She's also the president of the Student Surgical Society of Georgia. I'm really excited and looking forward to speaking with her. Welcome, Ankita, to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Tejas. It's lovely meeting you and lovely being
Likewise.
here. Thank you for the opportunity already. So I'm graduating in 5 months. It's almost surreal at this point. It almost felt like yesterday I was doing the whole consulting process.
Right.
And, well, I'm almost here, almost there at the finish line, actually.
Right.
How have you been?
All good, all good. I do this day in, day out. I love talking to students, understanding, their journey, their experiences. And the amazing thing is everyone's story is so unique. There is so much to learn. And through this podcast, we want to ensure, the students, high school students, don't make the mistakes that possibly you or some other students have made, right?
Yeah, I think that's what the podcast is about, The vision for this podcast is whomsoever is like watching this with their parents or anything, as we spoke about right before, they have plenty of questions. I know I did. And now I finally am in that space in life that I could finally give answers, probably some mentorship or advice to like both the student as well as their parents. So I think this is a great initiative.
Thank you.
And I really wish I had it, perhaps, That's the only thing I would change.
So firstly, I want to know what are the emotions, that you're going through right now? Because in a few months, you're going to be a doctor, right? This must have been your childhood dream to become a doctor. And finally, it's there, right?
Childhood, I wouldn't say. My experience with why I wanted to be a doctor is quite different. And I'm pretty sure probably a tiny fold of students could probably relate. No, I was not someone who was just born into, the conception that, okay, I think my calling is medicine. In fact, I think I had things ranging from MUN, I wanted to be a UN delegate.
Right.
That kind of drifted into journalism. At one point, it was foreign correspondency. And the story of that is actually quite interesting. It was one of these exhibitions. It was hosted at Gulf Medical University, if I'm not mistaken. It was one of a science exhibition, and I recall there was this specific patient. It was an autopsy report, and it was a specific patient. I remember his name, Mark, 67, smoker. And they squeezed the literal tar out of his lungs. So at that moment, I just knew this is something I wanted to do. It was quite late. I was probably in year 11. So I think from that, people can take away that this is not something you conceived knowing. Sometimes you just have life experiences that sort of trade you that way. It is really surreal. The emotions that I'm feeling pre-grad is, I don't know, it felt like yesterday. All of this was just a dream. Then it was a journey, and now it's almost reality, And 4 months to graduate for DNR, 6 years of work just to get 2 initials, right, next to your name. But I feel like there is a lot of weightage that just DNR holds, whether it's a PhD or, whether it's healthcare. There is a lot of weightage it holds. There is a lot of nobility it holds. And I'm just hoping with days that nobility and whatever comes with that name becomes part of me, becomes part of my character. So I feel like doctor is not a profession. It is a personality almost, a character, I feel.
Absolutely. And one of the highly regarded professions in our society.
Much needed as well with the pandemic and everything in mind.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah. After the pandemic, the aspirations of children to become a doctor has really increased. I'm very curious to know about a medical student's life. But before that, I just want to talk a bit about, choosing a destination or a university. What went through your mind that point of time? So, considering the fact that you decided, yes, you want to do medicine and you took up high school subjects which are, required for medicine, biology, chemistry, physics, so on and so forth. After that, what happened, So how did you go about, choosing a destination?
So, for me personally, I feel like this is catered to every individual. It's going to be different for everyone. So I can't speak for everyone. But for me personally, I feel like growing up, even though I didn't see myself as a doctor, I saw myself in the UK. I'm a Brit girl on the inside.
Right.
But that didn't work out, clearly, graduating from Georgia. But I feel like to choose a country, it's a holistic approach, You have to ask yourself, it's not just about the students' needs, it's about your family's needs at the end of the day, too. So because my interests did not concur with, at that time, my family's as well, that's the reason I diverted my plan. But I feel like you need to take into consideration small things like accommodation, day-to-day living, expenses. And that aside, what do you want, like academic gain? What are you looking for from your degree? Because honestly, medical education, you can open YouTube and get it. It's
Right.
not really a country that's, giving it to you. It's not a state or a university. Because you go to Harvard, yes, you're going to get like exposure for sure. But you put someone who's not so interested in Harvard, they're going to get the same education.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it depends on on the individual at the end of the day, I feel. So for me, my needs were, I would like clinical exposure, but my foremost need, especially at that time, was I wanted to be debt-free when I graduated. That was key to me.
That's amazing. That's very commendable.
Two is I wanted to start as early as possible and finish as early as possible. These two were key to me because people say, medical school is a long journey and stuff. And that, while that is true, you can do a couple of tweaks in your decision making in order to make it cater to you,
Right.
Just because people say it's 14 years, 15 years, you can choose a path like that, of course, but you can merry-go around it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that totally depends on you. Because, for instance, you choose the US medical system, that is 8 years of education, which is concrete. There's no getting around that. You do your pre-med, and then you have to do your med. And that is without people taking gap years,
Right.
And now, usually, a lot of percentile of people, they take their gap years. So that equates to around 14 or 15 years of just your medical degree.
Right.
I didn't want that because thankfully my parents put me in school early, so I kind of was always the youngest in class. I kind of held that very close to my heart. Like, I always want to be the youngest in class, in my workplace, just everywhere I go. So I kind of tweaked it to my own liking. So I feel like knowing exactly what you want is super important, and then making your decisions based on that. Does it collide with your interests? Super important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in my last 10 years of experience in, dealing with thousands of families, not hundreds, thousands of them, I have seen it's very important that for that family to chalk out their own plan, their own path, right? And not get influenced by their neighbors or other students in the, in the school. So firstly, I think for medical education, the financial ability of the, family is very, very important.
True.
As you said, the journey can be 5 years, 6 years, 8 years, 12 years, right? So the family firstly should have the financial capacity, right? Number one. Number two, I think the child's aptitude, the academic capability should be there as well. A lot of times, if the parents are doctors, they're influencing
Kind of push them, yeah.
right? So I think the child also needs to have that passion for science, that liking for science, right? And should be willing to learn sciences throughout his or her life.
Passion
right?
is something that you really, really need for
Yeah.
med school, It's not a term that should be thrown around really easy. Because passion, if you have true passion, no matter what comes your way, you don't deter from your path. Because I'm pretty sure in your life, before you even started this venture, you would, I think above anyone, you would also know. Passion is something, it's momentary sometimes, you know. Discipline is something you have to be consistent with. Like knowing this is my motive, this is why I do what I do. And which is why I feel like it's really important to ask a child, especially when they come to a consulting agency, such as you. Is this your passion? Is this your life path? Do you see yourself in 10 or 20 years as a doctor? And do you see yourself happy with the decision you made? Because living for your parents' decision, you're just going to live a life full of regret.
Yes. This is why I was asking you, how did you validate, right? Because it's very important, you know, that for the child to kind of experiment, right? Like do some internships, shadowing, talk to senior students such as yours, right? Or maybe travel to the university campus. Unless you put your foot in the water, you don't know if you're going to, you know, you'll be able to swim or not. So I think that child or the student needs to validate their passion and their purpose and see if I can belong here, as you said, for the next 10, 20 years. I think this is super, super important.
Oh, for sure. So I feel like that is something I did. So right when I thought this is something I would be interested in, right? The very next, a couple of months later, I got an internship at IMH, which is International Modern Hospital. They give out good internships even for high school students, right? So that is how I sort of tested the waters, you know, because you can have interest. To solidify your interest, as you said, you gotta know what is the environment of a healthcare facility, you know, what is it exactly like? So I did an internship there for around a month or so. It was a really good internship, very
This was
fulfilling.
in which grade? You might like it.
I
Was it the final year of your high school?
year 11.
Okay, so a year before your final year. Okay.
So, and I did British curriculum. So we have boards that go from year 10, 11, 12, and 13. And thankfully, I didn't do year 13, so which is why I skipped a year. And that is exactly why I chose Georgia. So like I said, for me, time was of the essence. You know, it's always going to be my priority. Like there's my goal, and then there's how can that goal kind of meet me halfway in order to, you know, get the most out of it as well as in the least amount of time possible. That's my priority always. So I did the internship at IMH, and that is what solidified my interest, you know. The doctors there are amazing too, you know, they really help you shadow them in a way. You know, you would just sit in the corner of a room, and from day in and day out, you basically are with a doctor through their entire day. You know, you kind of see how they go about communicating with the patients, little things like how they come or reach a diagnosis. You know, these are critical things. So I feel like I would advise students, if they don't know this is for them, or actually even if they do, you know, do internships during high school.
Yeah,
and there
absolutely.
are a lot of places over here.
I second that opinion, yeah. How does this internship work? Like, what happens in this internship? Are you just supposed to observe the doctor?
Yeah.
Or you're supposed to do some assignment? Can you talk
not
a bit
really.
about that?
It's assignment, that depends. So I did have a doctor who gave me an assignment, actually. Dr. Josephine. She's a gynecologist at IMH. And she used to tell me what to prep for the next day because she kind of knew her patients beforehand. So she kind of knew the cases that were going on. And at that time, all of these terms were foreign to me. Because year 11, you don't know anything about like OBS-GYN, anything, you know.
Right.
So you just basically know what board exams expect you to know. And that's mostly about plants.
Right.
So in order to make these terms feel less foreign to me, she would tell me what to come prepped with for the next day. And so in a way, yeah, she did give me assignments, but for the most part, you kind of just follow doctors around from morning.
Right.
It's basically you just tail them. Even I tailed them even during their lunch break, which was probably, I was a nuisance to them because during their lunch break, while they just got to sit, I would just be like, so like, can I sit with you? And I'd ask them all sorts of questions. And I feel like it's the best way to get exposure to a field. Especially as a woman, I had a lot of questions, you know, because as a woman, you have these questions, whether it be it from society or not. You ask
Yeah.
yourself this, like,
Yeah.
in the long run, will I be able to manage this and a
Yeah,
family life
family
or a
together.
lifestyle, stuff like that, you know? And seeing doctors who are women really, really help you. They really help you. Talking to them, having conversations with them, and knowing that yes, it's totally possible. You can be a mother, you can be a good wife, you can be a good friend, and a great doctor. It is possible.
Absolutely, absolutely.
These
Yeah.
are questions you have, growing
Right.
up, and I'm sure, like, if this is just advice for any field, I'm pretty sure you can agree as well.
Yes.
Talk to people who are in the field
Yes.
already.
I think this is what is lacking because students are getting influenced by social media
Mm-hmm.
nowadays, right? So it's very important that they kind of separate reality from social media,
True.
right? Actually put your feet on the ground and experiment. Like I loved what you said that you were dabbling with journalism, so many other things. I think that's the way to go, I feel, right?
You definitely should. I feel like, I mean, yes, there's a handful of people who just know what they want to do.
Right.
They'll probably be like a life-changing experience or something. They just know from the get-go,
Yes,
this is what.
yes, yes.
But for most of us,
Yes.
I recall we were having a conversation about the things that you wanted to do.
Yes.
The different sorts of things that you put your hands into before Gyanberry became,
Yes, yes, yes.
So I feel like it's really important that you dabble in a couple of things.
Yes.
You're only young once.
Yes.
Everyone says that, but it is true. This is the time that you put your hand in things, test
Right.
waters, see if it's too hot, see if it's too cold. Then you find something that fits right.
Absolutely. I think very well put. I think I also wanted to talk about, Georgia. Tell me why Georgia. Tell me a little bit about, your experience with the country as Georgia as a medical, as an international student, right? One thing I know, of course, like it's quite closer to UAE, it's 3 hours. But still as a, international student, the experience must be quite different, right?
For sure. So language was a barrier, still is actually. I barely know how to say left, right to the to the cab driver. But honestly, that gets you by. That's kind of
Right,
enough.
right.
And you ask how much.
Right.
Those are like things that you need for like day to day. But language was a barrier. But then you kind of, just like everything in life, you kind of just learn things through people. And I feel like with all the difficulties that every country would have, right? Knowing that you are not alone is so important, because sometimes the world can get really lonely, especially for someone like me. I've clinged on to my parents for the life of them, So suddenly it was like almost one day I was with them. I had a roof over my head. I didn't have to think about meals. I didn't have to do laundry. And then the very next day I was pulled out
You have to do
of
everything.
that comfort zone. And it was just frustrating. It was really frustrating. The first couple of months it was a new place, and like every place, there's racism, stuff like that.
Right.
And it was very hard to navigate through these things.
So how long did it take for you? Like 6 months to get used to it, or
Around
maybe
6 months to a
yeah?
year. I feel like that depends on from person to person, but
Right.
the second I found my sort of troop of people, I feel like that always just eases you in. So I
Right.
found my troop of people like a couple of months in, and then I was just like, people, I'm not alone.
Right.
Everyone's leaving their family and coming here. And everyone's doing it in order to pursue the same passion that I have.
Right.
So, that kind of just eased me down, and then next thing you know, I'm okay.
And did you travel alone, or you had like buddies or students going to the same university
I
from
didn't
here?
know anyone when I
Wow,
went there. So
okay.
I heard it through a friend of mine. He's in my church. So he told me about this, and he was a year senior to me. So yes, sort of he did help me a lot when I went there just to navigate myself around. I went with my parents, trusted
Okay.
ones. I went with them first, and then they stayed with me for, I think, 2 weeks until I found an accommodation, and then I just went on walks everywhere just to know, like, what's there in the vicinity, like around my university, what stores are there and stuff like that. And I feel like making yourself familiar with your surrounding can ease you,
Okay.
into it. Knowing the things around you, the people around you, can ease you into things. And honestly, it's all momentary. Because I remember right now, I'm scared for the future. I'm really, really scared about what I'm going to do after this. I'm going
Well, what's your plan, by the way? What you plan to do after this?
plans. So as such, and I know everyone can attest to this, after med school, everything seems like a question mark.
Absolutely, yeah.
And again, I'm going to live by the thing. I'm going to put my hands everywhere, I'm going to... So when it comes to licensing, it is a huge process. It is a huge process.
You mean within Georgia or?
So in Georgia, the thing is with all EU countries, right? So whether it's Poland or Georgia or any place like this, you have to know the language in order to intern over there.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's a must, and I didn't pick up Georgian.
Okay.
And nor was I keen on it as well, because I just felt for me in the long run, this is not a place I see myself,
But
sure.
don't you need to know the language because you're going for clinicals, right? In your year 4, year 5, year 6. So how do you manage that without?
So for the most part, see, that's what I said. Language is a huge barrier, right? Because you're not, for the most part, most people speak only Georgian or Russian.
Right.
So you got to know either one of the languages if you really want to understand what the patient and the doctor is speaking. But the plus side for this is you get really good professors. I would say most of them. That comes with every university, obviously. And not everyone is going to be the most elitist. But for the most part, most professors, they sort of translate everything for you once the patient's out of the room. And so you kind of are still in the loop of what the patient management and treatment care is and stuff. So you are part of the entire scheme, the diagnosis. And in fact, this sem, I met a wonderful teacher. We had our internal medicine rotation. And she took us through absolutely every step, so much that she almost looked at us that we were colleagues of hers, And that's very rare. And she, a patient would come in and she would literally tell the patient to go out for a bit so she could discuss the case with us. And we would all come up with a diagnosis together. And that's what your internship here is about. You're trying to get into the shoes of a doctor. You're trying to know, you should know how to establish good communication with the patient, how to earn trust, how to show empathy, stuff like this. Down to the nitty-gritties like, okay, how to come to a diagnosis. What are the set of questions you need to ask? So yes, there is a language barrier, but I would say it also depends on the individual, how much they go out to seek information. That is super important, because no professor is going to say no. So if you would just go to them and ask them or show your interest, you will get the answer you're looking for.
So it's possible to manage your clinical years without knowing the Georgian language.
Definitely,
with high proficiency. It's possible.
Definitely. And they do teach it to you the first 2 years of uni. It's compulsory.
Okay.
So you do know the basics. Almost you can kind of identify at least what the patient's talking about. If the patient's head is hurting, at least, you kind of know, okay, Thavi, that means, okay, something related to head. So you can kind of jot down from there,
Okay.
Yeah.
But students who want to pursue a career in Georgia, they must then pass the language exam, right? To get the qualification to practice in Georgia later on, right?
Definitely,
so that's a must.
So you have your medical licensing exam in Georgian, which you have to pass.
Right.
And the same goes for any other country, like be it Russia or Poland, etc. So it's the same. You have to know the language. That does.
Yeah, I've seen, because when I talk to students, although they are very good in biology, chemistry, physics, the things needed for to pursue medicine, what they're scared of is the language, right? That's why a lot of students, they go to only English-speaking countries, saying that I don't want to deal with this, right?
True.
But at the same time, I have seen students who had phobia of a new language. They have kind of coped up very well, So
For
as you
sure,
said,
it
the university
really
have
isn't-
classes, then you have the buddy
all
system.
our classes are in English. All of them are in English. So it's not really a hurdle per se. But like I said, it's manageable, I would say. It's
right?
really manageable. Once you get there, you get the hang of things. It's not. And I have friends who have absorbed the language completely, you know? So this is just me as an individual.
Right.
If I think or deem something is not necessary to me, because I ask myself, is Georgian for me necessary? Because it's a pretty old language. Can I take this information and go to a different part of the world? I didn't think so at that point. So I didn't deem it necessary to even pick it up or seriously learn it. But I know a bunch of my friends who can speak Georgian very fluently or Russian very fluently. And I have friends who have gone to Turkey in 3-4 months.
Yeah.
They've just learned Turkish fluent down to everything, you know.
Yeah.
They can
That's
give the
another popular
exams.
destination. I've seen a lot of students from UAE, they go to Turkey, right? And
But from what I've heard, I feel like their degree is not validated because I have 2 people in my class. They did their medical education in Turkey, and then there was some issue. I don't know the exact details.
yeah, I
of
think
it.
this is
And that's
another
when they
important
came
thing
here.
for students to know, that when you choose a medical school, at least have a clarity. Are you going to come back to your home country for practice,
True.
or you are going to go further to another country, you know, for your licensure? And then see if that university is accredited in that country A and country
That
B,
is very
right? I
important.
think this is a fundamental
That
thing
is
that they should.
Fundamental research, almost.
Yes,
That is a
that-
really
that's
important
very
question to
important.
ask.
Otherwise,
you
you'll
know?
be in a big limbo, right? Like you'll be stuck.
I have someone who's nearly 29 in my class,
Yeah.
and he studied in Turkey, finished his MBBS. He did everything, only to find out his degree is not accredited in his home country.
Oh, that's
And that's
terrible.
why he
That's
came.
terrible.
I know. But he's still doing it, and that says a lot about, you know, why,
Right.
like, why he's in medicine.
Right.
But still, it can be really heartbreaking, you know. Just imagine, like, I'm graduating
Absolutely,
and I get to
yeah,
know.
yeah. And this is the, you know, the purpose behind the podcast, right? Like high school students who are listening to this, you know, they kind of know everything that they should, you know, think about right away, right? Not just the cost aspect, but all these minor aspects when planning for university and for the destination is so crucial, right? Because these small things impact the bigger things, right?
True.
In the long run.
True.
Right, so let's talk about the cost of education. How much does it cost? You know, like how much do you have to pay to the university? How much does it cost for your accommodation? In general, like if any parent wants to plan like 6 years, how much would it cost
So
them?
for just the fees, I would say it's around 8. It starts at around 8K.
US dollars, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, that's in dollars, because the big transactions that's made in Georgia, at least, is in dollars. So whether you're paying rent for accommodation or tuition fee, it's in dollars. Everything else is in Georgian lari.
Right.
So it starts around 8K, and then it goes up to 14. That
Okay.
depends on which program. So
Right.
most universities, they have 2 programs. One is a European
Okay.
MD, and one is a US MD.
What's that, if you can explain?
So the only difference in that is USMD is tailored for the journey to US.
Okay.
So at least the university that I'm studying in, they have a partner college in the US,
Okay,
which is
nice.
called Emory University. So they send students from Georgia to the US for their clinical clerkships, for their internships, etc. So people who already have the notion that, okay, I see myself in the US and I would like to join the US healthcare system after MBBS in Georgia,
Okay.
I would advise them to probably go into the USMD.
Okay.
EUMD is for people who either don't know or is not in the US.
Right.
So who don't have future plans in the US.
Hmm.
But the program does differ. Your professors are very different.
Okay.
So most of the professors in the USMD, they have licensing in the US, so they teach you. So obviously it is better
Interesting.
that you
Okay.
have first-hand teaching and exposure to people who have worked in the US healthcare system.
Makes sense. Makes sense, yeah.
But apart from that, accommodation and living costs is not as much as other countries, I would say. Actually, not as much also is not even necessary to say, because it's barely 1/6, as we spoke before.
Right.
So accommodation can range anywhere near, so if it's a 1-bedroom, I'd say probably $500 plus. That's for a month. and you could also get utilities included in that. So that depends on your real estate agent, that depends who you're getting the house from, and you can share it with a lot of people as well. So most people, they share it with their friend or 2 other people as well. And for the most part, for the first year, students prefer to go and stay in a hostel, which is shared accommodation.
Obviously, and I'm sure parents are also
Exactly.
preferring that option.
It's an ease of comfortability, right, for the family as well, knowing that your child is with people, around people,
Absolutely,
and not alone and isolated.
Makes sense.
So I would probably recommend people to go and stay at a hostel. So that's enough time for you to gain exposure to the place. You get to know what's in your vicinity. You get to explore it not alone.
Right.
You get to explore it with people who are exactly in the same situation as you.
Right. So for parents to kind of estimate the total cost, so you said between $8,000 to $14,000. So let's consider $10,000 on an average, like annual tuition fees, and then $500 for accommodation. That makes it $6,000 for a year, and say another $3,000-4,000 for ad hoc expenses.
Any extra expenses.
So you're looking at $20,000 max, roughly per year, including everything. So if you do, your medical studies in the UK or in the US, from my experience, it's going to hover somewhere around $50,000 to $80,000 per year, right? So yeah, this is like 1/4 of the cost of education in the US and UK, which is amazing. And then you said there are possibilities to go into the US with the US MD track, and with the EU track, you can maybe go to Europe or come back to your home country. This is amazing. Like cost-wise, I think this is an amazing option then for
it really
a
is.
lot
It
of
really is, and I feel
students.
like that's the reason why people choose a destination like this.
Yeah.
Cost effectiveness is the number one reason why people would prefer going to Georgia or Russia, etc.
Can you break down the 6 years? What exactly happens during these 6 years, just in a nutshell?
So the first 3 years are your preclinicals, and the next 3 years are your clinicals. So preclinical years, and this kind of follows the same sort of system everywhere, even back home in India as well. So it's the same subjects that you get taught in India as well as the UK. It's the same system. You have your preclinical subjects like histology, micro, etc.
Right.
And then your clinical years, which are 4, 5, and 6, you spend most of them in a hospital. I feel like the last time I actually went to university was a couple of years ago. We only go there for like exams. That's about it. But we don't have any classes in university anymore.
Okay.
So our day-to-day is in a hospital. So we basically just do rounds now. We just take in patients with the doctors. So it's pretty much the same system or the same outline of the system as you would find back in India or somewhere else as well.
Right. What's your favorite subject, by the way, in the 6 years? Any particular?
Internal medicine, for sure. I mean, I really enjoy surgery as well. I love surgery, but subject-wise, so surgery is something that I see myself doing day to day. And this could be a very tricky answer for me, but surgery is something I see myself doing day to day. I love the operation theater. I feel I've always felt in tune with it. I've always felt like, a puzzle piece with it. But there's something about internal medicine that is just so multidisciplinary. It is so, it's teamwork makes the dream work sort of situation. It's just a bunch of people, like-minded people, trying to solve a case. It's almost like CID, some detective stuff, that kind of makes it fun almost. So yeah, for sure, IM is my favorite subject, and the professor also is just awesome. We were so blessed this year.
That also influences you a lot,
for
isn't
sure.
it? I think the teacher that, kind of creates interest around that topic. I was going through your profile, and I read that you are the president of the Student Surgical Society in Georgia. So firstly, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I think managing these things along with your studies, like medicine, as we know, is so demanding. So tell us a little bit about, tell me a little bit more about this initiative, what exactly this society does and how it benefits the students.
So a friend and I, a colleague, we both initiated this. It was a really funny story, actually.
Which year was this?
It was around fourth year. Fourth year. And we were talking, and we found that there was a void in the medical education, right, in Georgia. because you see, for instance, in the UK and US, they have societies for every
Yes,
single
they do. Yeah.
university.
Yeah.
Forget university, they have societies for every arc in a university. For instance, things ranging from like, dance society, Indian dance society, you have Spanish dance society. You have so many different societies, and we found that why isn't there we saw like this gap, right? Why is there a void that is not, we're unable to connect like-minded individuals. If you were set in a room, and if you ask like who over here like really likes surgery, and people put their hands up, and you compile them together, you get a conversation going out of them, and I kid you not, it would be the best conversation.
Yes.
That's something that really sparks your interest, it sparks your passion, it gives fuel to your zeal.
Right.
So we saw this void, and we thought, why not a society in Georgia? And till this time, there was none. There was none. So it was the first of its kind, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity itself, because so how the sort of timeline of events went was so fast, actually. It was surreal again. We spoke about it one night. The very next day, we made like a presentation. It was a tabletop presentation. And we went to one of our professors, who is a head of an association in Georgia, the Surgical Association in Georgia. We went to him, just asked him, like, what do you think about this? He loved the idea. We presented it to a national conference sort of thing. So it's basically 15 other surgeons who are part of the same network.
Okay.
We just presented it to them, and they were like, okay, here are the resources that I have. I'm the founder of this clinic. Take my clinic, use it for, students. There was someone else who has a journal, a Georgian journal. They told us, they were like, okay, here's a journal. If there are people interested in publishing in this journal, we'll do it for free. So people get merited to be part of the society, So
Nice.
it almost attracts people, because they're like, oh, through SSG, I could get my research published, or through SSG, I can network with surgeons around the world. So that was our entire intention, to sort of find a podium which could branch into people's interests, or tap into people's interests.
And this is open for all students in Georgia?
Yes.
Like from any university,
Yes,
they
of
can
course.
be part of. This
All
is
over.
amazing. Wow.
And we just had a couple of conferences, both national and international conferences. By the grace of God, they went really
Nice.
well.
Nice.
And it sort of kind of takes you to a new venture, because now you're not
Absolutely.
only thinking about medical school, you are also thinking about business,
Yeah.
infrastructure for conferences.
Yeah.
These are things that, you get exposed to.
Yeah.
And it's not just medicine.
And these are possibly the skills medical students don't possess, right? Like they're so
Exactly.
busy studying in clinicals, but these are real life skills, like any doctor, should possess.
to-
Maybe
to
they want to start
find,
their
for
own
instance-
hospital or clinic, they should have these skills with them. Yeah, so firstly, tell me about the admissions process. Like if I'm a high school student, typically what do I need to apply to, medical schools in Georgia?
Well, a good resume. So
Okay.
just something that kind of reflects that this is what I'm interested in. So like I said before, doing an internship, community service hours, volunteering hours, obviously these things kind of play a really crucial role
Right.
into reflecting in your application that I want to do medicine.
Okay.
Apart from that, for Georgia specifically, we had a couple of interviews, and there was no entrance exam at that time. But recently, from what I know, they are asking for students to have completed NEET,
Yes.
as well as there is also an entrance exam.
Yes. So the current rules from what I know is they need to pass the NEET exam so that they're qualified to practice in India if they and this is applicable only for Indian citizens, right? For other
It was a
nationalities.
rule that came through the NMC Council in India itself.
Yes. Yes.
So they are the ones who sort of kind of put their foot on the ground. They were like, okay, every medical student has to sort of be in par with all medical students applying to India
Right.
as well.
Right. Right.
So they asked for a need, but thankfully I was not part of that batch.
Yes,
So
you
I was
luckily
saved.
escaped that thing. Okay, so good resume, right? A strong resume expressing your motivation to become a doctor. Then you said interview, and still, from what I know, it's still the same thing. Like they interview students to validate your motivation and to see your English communication skills. And Also, I think the high school marks in your sciences, I think,
Yeah.
does that matter?
So having your sciences is a must. So again, I was part of the batch that was spared from that. So
Right.
I didn't do physics back in school. So I did my A levels, which is from a British curriculum school. So I dropped physics the first chance I got.
Okay.
So thankfully, it was not a problem for me.
That time, yeah.
But now they are asking that you do have all three of your sciences and preferably math as well to accompany it.
Right. Yeah, but I would advise all the students that you check the subject combinations. You know, those are the
Exactly.
prerequisites that may differ from university to university.
So another advice, and I find this really key, right, in choosing a university, is knowing which country you want to go to. That comes down to the thing that we
Absolutely, yeah.
discussed.
Yeah.
Knowing what exactly you want out of your university experience, academically and financially.
Right, right.
Two would be researching the specific university requirements. That is very important because it's different from uni to uni,
Absolutely,
One
absolutely. Yeah.
uni does not need physics and
Right.
another needs math,
Yes.
So you need to check the university entry requirements, and that's readily available on any
Yeah.
website.
And that too, I think they should do at least 2 years in advance, right? So
For
in
sure,
case if you
before
need to take
you your board exams.
Yeah, absolutely,
So you know
yeah.
what subjects you need to choose, what
Yes.
subjects you need to go through with,
Yeah.
It's really important.
Let's talk about the social life of a medical student, because from what I know, students think that there's no social life for medical students. It sucks, right? And there is no time for doing anything else apart from studying. So how much truth is there
I
in that?
feel like that's a myth,
Yeah.
because especially with the whole era of social media taking over, medicine is sort of advertised in such a way that, listen, it is time consuming.
Right.
It is going to take up every single second of your day. But that is so individualistic,
Right.
You can definitely study for like 3 hours a day, come back home, have a great meal, and spend time with family and friends, and go out and party and come back home and study next day for the exam. It's really not that hard, and there's nobody pressuring you to do anything, So it comes down to you and your skills of time management.
Tell me how was your first day? Tell me a typical day. How much time you studied, and how much time you partied, or you took a break, not
So-
partied, but
Definitely, my first year, I don't think I picked up a book. I
Okay.
don't think I picked up a book.
Wow, okay.
Because, I was just so excited to be in university and
Right.
really enjoy university life, just like every student. So, I'm not your typical nerd, I don't enjoy studying, because if everyone looks at a medical student, they're like, you must really enjoy studying. No, I don't.
Wow, that's
No,
such
I
a
don't.
contradiction, right?
It
To a
is
typical
contradiction.
perception,
See,
right?
that's what I'm saying. All of that is just a myth.
So how did you manage then to clear the exams? How did you cope
It
up?
is-
Because
it just comes
first and
down-
second year are quite tough, right?
It is. It
doesn't matter which
definitely
medical
is
school
hard.
you're in.
It is
Yeah.
really tough. Those are like really tough exams, but it does not mean that you can't have fun, because I was literally talking to a friend about this, and you see people in sales that work the same amount of time,
Mhm.
if not more, maybe less, I don't know, but as a medical student.
Hmm.
So this kind of difficulty is there with every profession. Every profession demands you at your best. Every profession demands your time. Every
Right.
profession is time consuming. I feel like it comes down to time management and prioritizing and deprioritizing your tasks. Knowing what tasks are not really necessary right now, and things that are not so urgent, things that are important but not urgent. So I feel like knowing your way to do
So
or
the secret
maneuver
sauce is time management
Deprioritizing.
and prioritization, right?
and deprioritizing.
Deprioritizing.
Because it's really hard to say no.
Right.
Because in med school, it's like everything is important, right? You have 10 assignments due.
Yes.
Everything seems important. But knowing what is important but not necessarily urgent right now, and vice versa, is really important. Knowing how to say no, knowing boundaries, super important.
So tell me a couple of things that you would tell younger Ankita, like 6 years back, things that you should have considered, right?
Well, I could write the Bible for her. But that aside, I feel I would definitely tell her not to doubt herself, right? Because imposter syndrome happens to the smartest of people. And when you get it, you just know you're smart because you're always trying to be better. And I feel like that attitude is a great thing. I feel like it shouldn't bring you down. So don't doubt yourself and don't fear failure, you know? And don't be comfortable where you are. Try and always get out of the box that you're put in because society just loves to put you in a tiny little box. Make your way out of it and don't follow the rat race because I feel like med school is something that you hear so much about, and it's almost like you live these like lives of people telling you on the internet that I'm so drained and I can't do this. And while there is some truth to it, of
Right.
course. I have this thought almost every day. But your experience is not going to be like someone that you saw on the internet. It is not going to be like that TikTok video that you saw. It is your experience, is what you add when you become a doctor.
Right.
So I think that's about it.
Absolutely. I think these are amazing motivational words for students, especially for high school students who are listening to you right now. If you can do it, I'm sure they can also now aspire to
And
do
I
it,
feel
right?
like people should know that you don't have to be the brightest as well or
Yeah.
the most, because I wasn't. In all honesty, back in high school,
Make
I
that
really
too.
wasn't.
Make that too.
Yeah. And I feel like people like us, they just know that you're
Yes.
not born with like the biggest set of brains,
Yes.
And everyone is pretty much the same.
Absolutely.
There's nothing differing the smartest with someone who's not so smart. I feel like it's just interest and passion. And honestly, when I say that I was not the smartest, I was the naughtiest kid in class. The teachers used to literally beg my parents, like, I will resign my job if you don't get this kid out of class. And that kid is going to treat probably my teacher's, like, daughter or
Right.
something. I don't know, one day. But, I feel like doubting yourself or putting yourself in the box that society puts you is going to get you nowhere. Fight
Absolutely.
it. Just fight it and, like, give it a go. If you start to believe what people are telling about you, that's when you lost. That is when you lost.
Yes. That's the voice you should not hear.
Yep.
Right. Absolutely. I think amazing. Great words of wisdom for aspiring doctors. We call it as the future doctors. So I hope students who are listening to this podcast get some inspiration from you.
I really hope so too,
Right?
because I know
And
my younger self
I hope
would.
when you become the surgeon, I visit you in your hospital.
God forbid,
Right.
you don't need surgery.
For consultation, but not for surgery. But I hope to see you as a surgeon,
Thank
wherever
you very
are,
much.
right? That's what I
Thank
meant.
you. And I wish you all the very best in your
Yes.
ventures too.
Thank you so
This
much.
is a brilliant idea,
Thank
because
you.
if something like this was developed back when I was probably even thinking of going to med school, and if someone could look me in the eye and tell me, like, half of the conversation that we
Right.
have, I know the amount of, calm and composure that I would have felt, let alone me, my parents also, because this phase of life, you have so many questions.
Right.
And if you can have a 15-minute video that just answers it,
Absolutely, yeah. This is the goal, right? We want to give students first-hand practical information, right? What they need to plan their medical admissions journey, right? It's fantastic. It was great chatting with you.
Absolutely a
and
pleasure.
Wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.
Right. So thank you for watching the Future Doctor podcast and tune in for more.